Welcome back.
Thanks.
I want to find out how you think your lesson went overall and why.
I think it went really well. The kids actually really surprised me with their thinking. They were very in tune to Peter's change of his character change, and their writing was just as fabulous. It was really everything I wanted. There's a couple of things obviously that would need to be tweaked, but really I was overall really pleased with the way the children did.
Do you have any data to show how the students did on the target?
Yep, I'm proud to say that everybody actually met this one. I have this data, which I'll show you some of the journals if you're interested too. We were working on using the illustrations and the text to describe character, so they all have C's there. I still do have one child that is still working on, when I hand him a book, identifying exactly who the characters are, so that's the minus there. But when I give him the character, he is able to do this piece. So we're still working here with that. And then I just went through the journals like we talked about at the pre-conference. I just went through the journals and I brought a smattering of my kids. Let's start with the high one because that's always nice, right? Yep. So here was the graphic organizer she used. Here was what she added, that he was now happy and nice. And then here was her thinking. So at first she thought that he was a bad boy. And then she gave her examples of why. And then now, I'm sorry, I gotta find where it says. So she says, now I want to be his friend. Now I want to be his friend because he helped his parent. He helped paint the chair.
That's amazing.
So, and then I brought, this is a low friend of mine. And you can see here, she did actually the same thing, happy and nice. And then here was her evidence. Her original thinking was that she didn't want to be his friend. I don't think I want to be his friend because he is, he's being jealous and sneaky. And then here she says, I think I want to be his friend now because he is being nice and kind. Now I think I would be his friend. Now he is being nice to his baby sister. So, and then I brought my ESOL/ESD student. He didn't have as much writing here, but remember we talked to him. He talked to the coach of Mrs. Diaz about it, but he did start to change his. At first, he thought he was mean, and then now Peter is nice. So he's got some of his words here. This is where he really struggles in the writing part, but he's better with verbal. So that's why we took both pieces, because the standard doesn't say they have to be able to write it.
So this is evidence that across your classroom, that at each level they were still able to revise their knowledge.
They were still able, and some were better than others. I think somebody said even a better word here. Actually, this is a really low student. He used the word helpful. So some of them had a more precise word than happy and nice, but at this level for first grade, they noticed that those were changes in him, and they could give their evidence.
Recognize it. And you said that there was one student that you're going to be working with further on that? Yeah,
so he was able to meet the target this time, which was describing the character using illustrations and details, but he still a little struggles with if I give him just a random book at his level, knowing who the characters are. So it's a vocabulary issue really for him. And an attention piece. So it's just constantly doing, we've been trying to do some gestures to the characters, who is in the story and pointing to ourselves, that kind of thing, just to give a little more having the verbal and the kinesthetic and the visual for him, because I think he really needs all of those pieces. But once he's able to identify the character with help and support, then he's able to tell how the character is feeling.
That's good. So at least he has it verbally.
He does.
So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the instructional strategies. I know that one thing that you tried that was new was the learning board. So how did that go for you, and what are your next steps?
Great. I think the kids really were able to visualize it. I feel like, so this is the scale. I know you saw it, and I can show you in their books. I'll pull his. They, in their scale, so they have the scale here, so you can see he's done some underlining, which is where they are. Or what we've taught, sorry, and then the check marks means he met that piece of the criteria. So on this one, he was able to identify the characters, and this one was setting now, too, he's worked on. So those pieces he's able to mark, But what I found better with the learning board this time is I feel like when you or someone else asks them what we are learning at the time, even though the learning target's up and they have their scale, that deer in the headlights kind of gets to them. I think they get a little muddy with it. So I like the learning board because it's right there, the doing, and they're able to. I highlight if there's if there's more than one word on there for a definition or whatnot. We underline it, and that's really helped them focus in on exactly what we're doing. So,
So it's an additional visual support for them.
it is. I'd like to try by the end of this year using the smaller stickies and having them making a learning board right in their journal.
Okay.
I'm not ready to do that yet because we're still in the process, but it's something I want to try this year.
It's a good start.
One of the strategies that I know has been very effective in your classroom is the organizing students.
Right.
You did a very, very good job of that. One suggestion that I have, because when you initially have the kids work together to turn and talk, some students seem to wait for you to come around before they start talking.
Yep.
And I know you have to get to all of the students. So one recommendation that you might want to consider is chunking your the way that you go back and monitor whether or not they're getting it.
Okay.
So maybe you're going to one side of the room first,
Okay.
and then you're taking note of, okay, I went to that side of the room first this time, I'm going to go to the other side of the room the next time, because different children may not respond to different questions
Right.
at the same rate. So
Okay.
just something to keep in mind
Definitely,
as you're doing
because I know
your
that's a
program.
problem for some of them. They'll talk, but they wait for me to be there.
Right.
So,
Right.
okay.
Absolutely. Anything else that would you like to share as it relates to the lesson?
So we're moving on to setting, and we're still working on that. So once I realized that everyone could describe the character, now we've moved on to identifying the setting, and I'm really seeing struggles there. So that's what I need to kind of go back to. It's funny because characters are so much easier for them, but setting's giving us a little difficulty. So I've stretched out the module a little bit. We're not ready to move on. So we're still working on setting, and I'm trying to try to have them put that in their mind, their character piece, and working on those describing. So remember, I had that chart for them for
Right.
characters, helping them kind of identify what the character traits were. We tried that again on the setting one. So once I knew they were ready to go from character, we did, and then I just do the old-fashioned, because it works for me, the sticky notes for my formatives, and then I just put them in 3 piles. Got it? Almost there, or halfway, and then needs my attention.
So you asked me to look at your classroom culture and how your classroom rules and procedures were during the lesson. And what I saw was that students followed your classroom expectations, and if they didn't, you addressed them. So you absolutely have an environment that is conducive to learning. I know that there are some specific students that you have to monitor, and you have specific
Right.
behavior plans for them. But for this lesson, those plans seem to work very well. You had a student that was close proximity. You also had a co-teacher helping you to monitor the behaviors, and the student that you have specific behavior concerns with was actually participating and engaged in the lesson during the entire lesson. So the strategies that you have, I feel like they're working. I know you're in there every day, and you might see additional things that you might need to be tweaked, but overall, you have a model classroom for classroom management processes and procedures. So continue to tweak those for individual students. That would be my feedback to you,
Okay.
because each child may need something different. So.
Okay, great.
So now I want to talk about your deliberate practice. What are your next steps with your deliberate practice?
So I did the reading of it, and we're working on the revising knowledge. I want to try it in a different subject area, because reading was easy for me. I got my mind wrapped around reading a little easier. So I just want to look for some places that I can do that work in science and in math. We've tried it a little bit in science because, of course, before we experiment, it's helped. But I haven't necessarily had them do all the writing for it, because at the beginning of first grade, they're just not ready to do all that writing. So they were doing more turning, talking. But I want to really focus on those stems of now I think, or at first I thought, and now I think. Really kind of thinking of those pieces and adding them to definitely math and science, and expanding that a little bit.
I would love to see that in a different subject area. So whenever you plan for that, invite me so that I can give you some feedback
Great.
On it.
One thing I did think that I wanted to do differently, that's one of the questions here, was it was the organization piece, as organized as I think we are. I had so many still fumbling to try to find, where they are. So I'm just going to try to do, like, just give everybody a bookmark sticky note. So here's the page we're on, and then where we go next. We've tried to organize it so we have the module, and then we have the scale, but this is a good example. But there are some that, and that's what I was feeling a little stressed about during the lesson, was that some of them were still fidgeting, and they couldn't find their scale, or they couldn't find their Peter. And so
That's a good idea.
a thought to put in place, because I felt like that was definitely a tweak I needed to work on.
It didn't take away from the learning, but I could see how that could help in future lessons.
Right.
So I want to remind you that that we will be doing our summative evaluation toward the end of the year. So you can send me any type of evidence or examples of domains 2, 3, and 4
Okay.
throughout the rest of the school year, and we'll have dialogue about that as
Okay.
well.
All right, so like the mentorship, all that stuff, or anything that I'm doing extra outside of, and then
Yes, you can.
lesson planning, even all that piece?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ms. Moody.